Speaking of social media, there is a very special guest that we have today from YouTube, is it?
Yes, yes. Nixie Pixel has been a tech media personality and early adopter of YouTube for many years. And I've watched her grow and mature. She's quite a fighter overcoming COVID, and she's just a wonderful woman, just getting better every year. She has educated perhaps a generation of younger people and maybe some boomers like me about uh, uh, tech, Linux, and open source on her YouTube channel. She has also helped many people make a switch to Linux. She was the first person to bring Linux to the Discovery Channel network, and prior to this was the show host for Tech TV. In 2017, she created her own open source community called Geek Beacon. And this is a fellowship of geeks that share values for social good. I've watched Nixie's Pixels YouTubes for many years. And even though I wasn't a known friend to her yet, she has been a friend to me. And I am delighted that the virtual experience this year has provided an opportunity for Nixie to collaborate with OLF conference. And she's here for you. She's here for me. Nixie, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, all. This is Nixie in the not so distant past coming to you to talk about how you build open communities. And I decided to come to you from a slightly before in the past because I am also simultaneously hosting this on my YouTube channel and I didn't want anything to blow up or core dump, which is exactly what we're talking about in the talk. So let's go through it together. So you want to build an open source community. Great, I did too. And we learned a lot through many years. So I'm Nixie, and let's just kind of go back to the roots of everything, right? So OLF is built on a lot of the very similar tenets that the FSF is. And if you had been here for previous days of the conference, they really talked about these tenets. So, free as in free speech, not as in free beer. Guess who said that, right? And that's all about community. And I've had some variation of open community running projects for 7 years now, I think. Yeah, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm going to put my webcam away in some of this. There we go. And so basically, you want to have the liberties and personal freedoms to run a program, study and modify a program, change and improve on the software, and basically, as I like to say affectionately in Tron, fight for the users. All right. So I want to ask you guys a fun little game. Which projects do you think are open? Do 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 do. Okay. If you guessed these, you would be right. And honestly, I was pretty impressed with the amount of projects that are open nowadays. I'm pretty excited with open source on the horizon. Oh, we can't forget GoBot. They are great for mechanical engies, and I love their sense of humor. They actually have an intense robotics framework called Cylon. All right. So who am I? I am Nixie Pixel. My last name is Pixel, I swear. um, Basically, I have been on the internet for quite a long time, and I have traditional education in video production. So I have a passion for open source. I had a traditional education in video production. I tried to get that to go together as many times as humanly possible, and because of that, I ended up on TV shows such as Tech TV. If you've ever heard of Screensavers or Call for Help, Chris Pirillo, Leo Laporte, yeah. So those are some good old throwbacks. And I was actually the first person to bring Linux to the Discovery Channel, and possibly the last person to do that as well. I definitely decided that I wanted to go my own route, and so I founded 2 companies. One of them was Geek Beacon. We are currently a nonprofit, a collective, in fact, and we are an open community of geeks. And my prior company to that I founded was a blockchain-based company called Equity Games, where we put digital assets like little games on the blockchain. So that was a little bit about me. And I want to talk to you about Geek Beacon, though. Geek Beacon is always going to have a place in my heart. That it stemmed off of that influence, I guess you could say. But there's so much going on right now. We have essentially a collection of over 6,000 geeks and nerds and coders and gamers and creators, really. And we have game nights. And actually, if you guys were in our BOFs, Birds of a Feather, we hosted it on our platform, which I'll talk a little bit in further slides about. But one of the big things that I'm really proud of is we're open in all things, and that's including openness of the mind. So we have a lot of great neurodiversity support for those with what we call squirrely brains, or neuroatypical people, like our squirrel army is what we call them. So yeah, so basically, as far as a community is concerned, there's tons of different types of communities. You have volunteer projects. So there's a lot of like core elements, right? It's like a neighborhood, you have nonprofits, and another thing, you have the sense of community, which is a really good foundational piece. And then you have the sense of commonality. So you have a set of shared goals and aspirations towards that goal, and it involves volunteers with various walks of life. So this all sounds great, right? But we share similar values and goals and aspirations. So why is it so difficult? Why is it so hard? So I'm going to kind of go over some issues that maybe you also have felt in your own community. I want to give credit to the artist here. Put me back over here. All right. So personality types. You have the overbearing. So personality types are really important because you're creating a group, and there are different personalities, which is why I really love. I think this image illustrates it perfectly. So you have the cat versus dog phenomenon. The alpha extrovert, the aspiring writer and philosopher, they thrive in group environments. And then, you have the cat, the quiet type. They don't really enjoy speaking on voice, and they don't necessarily want to talk and text, or vice versa. Maybe it's one or the other. Maybe you know people that don't like talking on voice. Maybe you know people that don't like talking in text. They don't like to speak up in a public forum or group setting, and they thrive in groups of in one-on-ones. And I want to really convey that there's no downsides. These are not negative things, really. This is just some behavior that's observed. I actually exhibit both of these categories, and I can be either or. It's just a blend, and there's no offense to if somebody is an introvert or an extrovert. Just is what it is. And you have to kind of deal with it. So another issue is you have the opinions warriors. There's no real consensus that comes from all this. It's kind of like you decide in your community, all right, so I'm going to decide, what is the best CMS, or what language should we use to design this, or what project management software should we use, or maybe even what platform should we use for this conference, right? It doesn't really matter. It just depends on, there's literally no consensus. So you have to have massive discussion on the pluses and minuses of each one. And you honestly don't really know if the community members involved would actually implement this thing. So, there have been times where we've debated them. We've debated the minutia of our website, which is terrible, by the way. If you want to check out our terrible website, it's geekbeacon.org. We admit it. It's okay. It's not offending anyone. And we wanted to, well, I'll talk about that actually in further slides, but basically we waxed philosophical on what type of stack we wanted, and we came up with the one we have. And we didn't really have anyone that could implement action. So that there'll be solutions, I promise, to this. So there's also issues of having different open philosophies, right? So you have open everything, which is very FSF. I super admire them. Like, everything's in the open, everything is open documentation. Everybody also might see your dirty laundry. Everyone might also see childish, silly arguments that you've had, depending on how open your documentation is. And then you have like Google and Microsoft and the corporate way, which is interesting, right? Because there's no visibility into anything, but it lets you work your tantrum out behind closed doors. So that's good. And it presents the illusion of composure and demeanor, right? So at least we look professional. So another thing would be, I keep having to move myself around. A single point of failure. So, where did Jane go? Why has Jane or John disappeared? They're not responding. Did they get a new girlfriend? Did they get married, have a kid, getting divorced? Insert crisis here. Well, how dare they not be available, right? Well, you're working with volunteers, so you have to keep that in mind too. And that's also super important. Oops, I'm going forward and forward on my slides. So you can tell I did this quite early before. Yeah, so like keep an eye for, I think I'm just gonna get rid of my webcam. There we go. How dare they not be available? Keep in mind, you're working with volunteers. They donate their time because they believe in the cause. But life always does come first. And also just keep an eye out for burnout. Be sure to take a break and make time for yourself. So here's a big disclaimer here. We don't have all the answers, and what worked for us doesn't mean that it'll work for you. That's really key here. Look for what's best for your community. We're always looking for better answers, and that's also going to come later on in the slides. So we talk about some of the problems. Let's talk about some of the solutions. So let's see if I can get away with putting myself up in the corner there. So this is the exciting part, right? You need to really SOP is not just for personalities, right? But it will also guarantee that your project will continue and anyone can pick it up because there's strong processes in place, right? So in those processes, and it's not like sexy to talk about processes, but you want to have requirements on having an agenda. You want to have a time box in your meetings, and you want to play to those personality strengths. That's also key. And basically allow for the text feed. That's another thing that we did. We allowed for like people that weren't super comfortable talking in voice. We also had a text feed, and vice versa. People that didn't want to talk in text could jump on our voice channel. So just kind of catering to those different personality types. And the worst case scenario, if it is a personality type issue, just keep them apart. They still care about what you're trying to go for, and they still want to make progress with you. So another solution we have for opinions warriors, we have actionable items. So if you have an opinion, that's great. It's really good to have that spidey sense where when an opinion of, hey, I think we should build an entire, completely restructure your website and make it into an operational Cylon, since we were talking about Cylons before. Well, that's cool. Opinions don't necessarily matter in all cases. You can tell me how to do it forever, but it would be so much better if you just showed me. And also, use the best tool for the job. You may find that you're like again, kind of digressing over and over again in chat. Our medium is chat, so it's kind of rough for us. We have to constantly take it out of that place of temporary temperance or temporariness and put it into a place of persistence. That's really key. I actually created this little GIF where it was like, hey, are you trying to ask me to do something in this chat room, be it Slack, be it Discord, be it IRC? Why don't you make a ticket with that? And that will be coming up soon. I'll kind of show you the processes that we use. So you have opinion warriors. That's fine. That's cool. We love feedback. We love ideas. We love discussions. We want to use opinion warriors whenever that situation arises. When do we not want to use those opinion warriors? If we're trying to get something done or we need a solution, right? So make a ticket for that project management thing we just talked about, or write a blog post, or start a project, create a website, update the GitHub, do something with the repo, something like that, right? Maybe with your spidey sense, you now know that's not the best place to use your opinion warriors. Perhaps use them in more your ideation phase, like your beginning phases, which I promise I will tie it all together in the end here. Their single point of failure is totally scary, especially when you're putting a lot of volunteer time into a project. Do you want to give the keys to the kingdom to one person only? No. Every lead in your project needs at least one co-lead, and every resource, so like every file, for instance, one person has access to files or drives, should have another person that has access. In fact, that's something that we employed even with our platform here with OLF. Like we had, I like to coin the term, backup, and then back up your backup, and then back up again. And I'm sure like they probably didn't love me for that, but it's really cool because maybe you have to use password manager and share credentials, and in order to make sure that something goes according to plan. And that's when trust is super important. Like you want to trust the people and earn and establish the trust that you have with your community members, because these are like your smaller, it's like a family. It's not really like work, but it's a passion project, and your people that you have with you are like your good friends in driving towards that, carrying the fire towards that passion. So that's awesome. And share access and back up everything, which is exactly what I said previously. So there are no absolutes. And so the solution for the different philosophies, okay, it's keep an open mind. There's no wrong answers. There's no absolutes. So somebody likes Ruby, somebody thinks it's overly complicated. Somebody, codes in only white space, which is totally a thing. That's fine. It just listen to your community, get feedback, survey them, make them feel appreciated and like their opinion is valid and valued, because they are. And what we have is called town hall meetings. So we basically have everybody in our community and people outside of our community come and just like we talk about what we're doing next, like what are our next milestones, and is this a good thing, or does this suck? And so we can kind of peer review it in a way where like, here's my thought on a project, this, and this. And then, the public, because we have town halls, at the end, we open questions for the public. And, you'd be surprised at what happens with, they kind of go like, oh, I never thought of that before. Have you tried this? And it's pretty awesome. So, the key is to really be able to accept criticism. And another really important part is when you decide that you want to choose the platform on Django, or, this this one path, stick with it, because I think one of the biggest issues I've had in my open source community life is that we would flip flop constantly. And it's okay. Like, we would, I mean, but our progress would show that, because we would flip flop and people would only be able to dedicate certain amount of time in one thing and another thing, and so just stick with it and go for it, and someone will always be unhappy. That the right path is really just the one that works for your community, and you really can kind of like get a good sense of that. And the thing that you may not want to hear is that it might not always be open source. I mean, we are using Zoom as a platform. Are we using Zoom as a platform because we love closed software? No, like we're having a open source conference about, open tools. So we're using it as a platform because we wanted to make sure that we got the conference out. And that was the most important thing. So basically, keep in mind what the goal is, and at least for our philosophy, for Geek Beacon's philosophy, is we have this goal, and we want to make sure that we don't make it overly complicated for ourselves. So for instance, I was a part of hosting another conference, and being completely open was fundamentally key. Under no circumstances would we deviate from that. And in that case, it did hurt us a little bit, and we were able to reflect on that. Our community let us know. And being able to have that open conversation where you can have that conversation and give the feedback is also super vital. Having postmortems when events are done, or meetings, reflecting on certain types of meetings, and just really being very introspective with the whole process. And with the previous convention I was part of, because we didn't choose a closed tool, we did end up having an IRC matrix telegram relay, which was super cool, but also really complicated. And it actually divided our audience into multiple groups. And not to talk crap about a previous thing I was a part of, but that's the whole point of the learning process. So our approach at Geek Beacon is not perfect. And I think that striving for the utmost of perfection will just truly, truly hurt your project and your progress in anything. It doesn't just extend to a community. It could be any project that you're a part of. But at Geek Beacon, we do try to use open documentation, open standards, open guidelines whenever possible. And when in doubt, document all the things. We have an open wiki that has, I have some videos in here I'm going to show you guys. We have an open wiki. We use Docusaurus. It's not open like Wikipedia open, like anyone can edit it. It's open as in like GitHub Markdown type stuff. It's an open notes tool. So we kind of standardize our processes that way. Yeah. And so we put a lot, this isn't like stunning and super, wow, I love this, but it's so necessary. We put much of our policies and protocols and governance. It's not very shiny, but it shows the lead and the co-lead positions, for instance, that we talked about earlier. And more of our process of how we create events. Let's see if I have. Okay, cool. The video is going to do the thing, right? Okay, yeah. So this is actually our forum. Our forum is open, open source. And basically we document our projects and our events. And so you can look at the alpha and the beta and the final forms of, forming Voltron to come up with different projects and how to work on those projects. So it's a process in and of itself. It's really easy, but as you can see, it worked out for our game night, for instance. Having those 3 levels means that, say you guys come into our community and you want to work on, we have somebody who loves AI and wants to work on an AI project, has no idea where to start. Okay, cool. Just put it in our forum, talk about it in an alpha project, and then as it gets more and more developed, it just kind of moves along its natural transition to a final project, which is what we were doing with our game nights tonight and last night. So it was really cool, and it worked for us. All right. It's gonna want to show you again. So so yeah, like even our website is open. It's using Wagtail CMS and with Django, as I've mentioned before. But honestly, like in our plight to be open everything, we ended up really overcomplicating it for ourselves, and we probably should have just chose the better tool for the job, because what we wanted to do was do a really great COVID-19 outreach program. And so that was the goal that we ended up losing sight of a little bit and kind of missing the mark. And again, this is a closed tool. We tried Taiga and other open source project management, but tracking tickets is key for progress for us. And Trello was easy, and that helped us make a public bounty board that everyone can see to help us with those mask bans and our community. And that was what worked for us again. So, and this is, I don't know if you guys were a part of the shenanigans that happened yesterday, but this is our Discord. We tried to use IRC. There's me pointing at the Discord because I wasn't sure if I was going to include my camera. As you could see, I've had a few snafus with the camera already. But yeah, we talk about the town hall you guys might see there. And that was really important for us because we actually tried a lot of open tools. We tried, we were IRC for a really long time, and then we're scaling a good bit, and we wanted to try something new. So we explored Matrix, and Matrix was so close, but it just wasn't there yet. And so we didn't really choose this tool. The tool kind of chose us. And so therefore we have a Discord now. And, there's no shame in that for us to have it. So our questions to you is, do you have a better way? What has worked for you? I think it's good, just like the Pengu is, stumped on things. It's just to, if there's any takeaway from this talk, it's just to kind of challenge the thoughts and how like what your philosophy is around open source, and how do you apply those thoughts into your own communities, and how can you run towards processes and documentation and ticket tracking and everything like that in a way that is most authentic to how to the value proposition of open source. And another question would be, how do we make it easier to build awesome tools without getting stuck in all the mundane details that I just talked about previously for half an hour? I would love to hear some questions to us, to Geek Beacon. I keep saying us, but yeah, open to Q&A. And actually, we're going to do our own little BOF in our Discord. If you're curious on what that is, it's just Discord /Geek Beacon. We're a partner Discord, and we would love to have you. And yeah, so we actually have study groups running right now. We are kind of exploring this really cool AI project where we want to make, what I would love is to be able to make conferences more accessible to people that love open source. So we have a GitHub that actually we have a ticket open, or we have a alpha project open in our forum that kind of talks about the beginning ideas of how a suggestion engine could possibly work for this, like an open conferences model. So say, I want to start a conference, but I don't know where to start. That was like a huge question mark for us as Geek Beacon, and perhaps even OLF. It would be great to have a solution for that is open. So also, we need web devs. I swear this was not a half an hour talk just to explain how Django didn't work for us, and we have a broken website and we need web devs. It just so happened to kind of naturally evolve to that. All right. Thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to me jabber on. You can check me out at any of these. I'm Keybase. I love Keybase. If you guys don't enjoy Zoom, just at least love the fact that Keybase is now under their umbrella. They do great authentication and they're really good with security tools. And my Keybase is Nixie Pixel. I'm pretty much Nixie Pixel on literally everything. And our Discord is the following. So I would love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for your time. And I will talk to you guys in the next one. Or actually, I will talk to you guys right now because I'm going to be talking for several more hours with the wonderful OLF team. Thank you guys so much.
Big thanks to Nixie for sharing her thoughts on open communities, and certainly all the work she's done with Geek Beacon lends us a lot of perspective. Fortunately, she's not only going to be joining us for questions and answers, she's going to be joining us to co-host with us through the rest of the program today. Welcome, Nixie.
Hello, hello. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm kind of manipulating two different sources at once.
Welcome. Super excited to have you and Geek Beacon with us today.
Thank you so
I'm going to
much.
step back and leave the mic with you. And I know Beth is going to be joining us shortly to work with Nixie through this program.
Sounds good. You guys will have to excuse me because I am also live on YouTube. So I'm going to be putting my eyes over to this side, but that is just to make sure that when that's done, I can roll this and that and the other thing. This guy is really handy, by the way, having a switcher. I never thought that I would need that. One of the questions that it's kind of funny to pull my own questions, but hopefully you guys are enjoying your conference and you'll be cool with me doing that. So one of the first questions was, what initially motivated you to start using Linux in the first place? And it's kind of a funny thing. Around 10 years ago, I decided that I was just going to throw I think that Linux is often comes into play when you have like dying beige technology that you just want to resuscitate. And in this case, I decided to just quickly put it up on one of my dying laptops. And YouTube at the time was a landscape where people didn't think about monetization. I don't even think there was a monetization model for it, but I basically just revived this dying laptop. And I think it was really close to Thanksgiving, and I was recording it for YouTube on, I don't know, 800 by 600, really tiny window. And yeah, I put it on YouTube. It was one of my first videos, and I got tons of feedback from people from India, for instance, saying that, thank you so much for showing me how to install Linux, because we have tons of hardware, but we don't have the actual operating system. Like, we can't afford the operating system. And I'm just like, wow, if this can be implemented in this use case, then I would love to just keep learning and keep talking more about it. And so that's what I did. And I've been doing it for around 10 years or so, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I think, just to speak on some of my previous presentation, I've never purported myself to be like a power user of Linux. And you'll see in the coming up talks, it'll be fairly more advanced. But my role really is to try to get Linux as more of an end user experience. And it's really unfortunate that you have things like, I think they did a news article, or they put Ubuntu in the news, where it showed this struggling college girl who had Ubuntu installed by default on their OSs, for instance. And she ended up flunking out of college because of Ubuntu. So it's really weird how Linux can get a bad rap, but it's a lot more user friendly than most people realize. And I guess that's why I'm here, and that's kind of the place that I'm coming from the most. Yeah, I actually have, I don't know if Beth is going to join us, but I have this giant box of OLF loot that I just received. And I'm
Good.
Yeah. Are you there? It was like, do you have video or are you just coming in as audio?
Here I am on video momentarily.
Oh, momentarily. Okay, momentarily works. Okay, awesome. Hello, hello. We have to stay safe.
Yeah, do you see my mom, Susan Rose, joining us?
Absolutely. Hi, Susan Rose. You can still talk through the mask, right? It is really good quality though. Did you guys already talk?
That.
Yeah. Did you guys already talk about the masks?
No, thanks for bringing it up. We are very excited to offer pandemic swag this year. Not excited about the pandemic, but excited that we can offer yet another gift to our supporters and professionals who have donated so much to make this entire conference experience available to everyone, and to thank them that we got this high quality luggage tag that will double as a conference badge if you choose to wear it that way, but a luggage tag is fine. You can go ahead and write down your details there, as well as these long sleeves
Oh, there you go.
are more seasonable for the Midwest region of the United States.
Like the climate right now.
Yeah, we're very, very excited to be able to offer these gifts to our wonderful supporters. Now, our web infrastructure person is Michael Schultes, and he just called me and asked for photographs so that I can post the masks to the website so that I can start to use the masks with free software. We've converted our website a couple years back to WordPress, and it was really the best decision ever. And it's so wonderful that we're going to be able to work with the WooCommerce plugin and utilize more free software to deliver to our community. I'm so incredibly thrilled.
Yeah, I think I want to kind of talk about that. If you don't, do we have some time? Hang on. I'm about to merge the YouTube audience with the Zoom audience. Let's see if I can do it.
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
I merged. I think I successfully merged because
Woo!
technically I came on here in the Zoom chat and then answered questions while I was still presenting in YouTube. So yeah, I just need to make sure everything's copacetic there.
Sure. I don't know if you got the message from Dorothy Gordon. She's the a delegate to the United Nations who joined us yesterday about the Sustainable Development Goals and how that relates to her work with LPI and free software. And it was really great to have her back today. Hi, Dorothy.
Yeah.
And to be able to see you from your perspective from the greater San Francisco area, to be able to say, yeah, we dig free software over our part of the world too.
Yeah, I definitely want to touch on, I think we don't have too much time until you have to introduce Colin, but just to give a nod back to the fact that you guys used WordPress, I think that you end up, well, is WordPress open? WordPress is
Yeah,
WordPress is open. Yeah, so I kind of think, just going back to the web dev woes, I think that might be our next route for the struggle that we've had for our website so far. But yeah, I think I will let you guys introduce Colin, if you don't mind. And I probably will, I actually have to push the presentation again through my side because so it doesn't go. Yeah, we'll see if but what was
well, 3 cheers for open broadcasts. software. I'm really impressed in how it's working and bringing the entire video production back to our virtual audience. I'm just so incredibly tickled pink.
Oh yeah, I have to say it's a challenge to not have been. I don't normally do live streams, and then I've not synced up the Zoom experience before. So this is like, I feel like I'm back in the days of old when I was a master control operator for a television station, and I had all these bells and whistles and things like that. But speaking of bells and whistles, if you hear a lot of honking, we don't need to talk about why there's a lot of car horns honking in celebration outside, but that's happening. So I apologize in advance. I was like, this can be a politics-free zone, but yeah. What was some of your favorite things about? Is Colin here? I don't want to go over, but I wanted to know what some of your favorite talking points were from the talk that you had yesterday with Dorothy.
Well, the favorite talking point that just completely astounded me is that we had put an open call out to creative hackers of all sorts to take a look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and figure out how do the values of freedom apply to each of them, in which ways can free software or even free hardware or other creative commons license or other free license can help achieve these sustainable goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you explain a little bit what you mean by like sustainable for the audience that just joined?
Oh, fantastic question. So the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations are to recognize that global poverty is still an issue and is a particular issue in developing nations. It is not politically correct to call it that, but some people may think of these nations as third world countries.
Right. Yeah.
The goal is to elevate these countries into being a developed nation, but doing that in a responsible way where you are ethically not violating things like planet Earth. So,
Right.
like, also as ethically making sure that we do not look at it as taking away people's freedoms to try to expedite the delivery into the developed world nation by making it a choice of whether or not you want software freedom or if you want to be a developed nation. No, you can do both, and you can do both faster with free software, as I believe.
Yeah, that's something that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I've had the experience of dealing with a lot of companies in these developing areas, especially when I was a part of the blockchain world. And one of the things that I guess I've taken for granted where I live is that, you know, there's a lot of corruption. I actually spent a year in a branch of the Peace Corps in Manila, the Philippines, and during the typhoon Haiyan, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but basically it leveled their whole country for the most part, and especially Tacloban and in Ground Zero. And they used a lot of free software, and you know that really helped unite the people. But I think Colin's ready. If you're ready to introduce him, you're more than welcome to.
Sure, fantastic. Thank you so much. That